In the heart of World War II, Britain needed more than just steel. It needed strength, precision, and resolve. Launched in 1940, HMS Duke of York was the third of the King George V class, a class built under treaty limitations, but pushed to the edge of what a battleship could be. Armed with 10 14-inch guns, protected by heavy armor, and fitted with radar, fire control, and state-of-the-art systems, she was a ship built for a new kind of war, faster, more unpredictable, and fought from sea to sky. By the time she was commissioned in late 1941, the world was already ablaze. Britain stood blooded but unbowed. The Bismarck lay at the bottom of the Atlantic, but the Kriegsmarine was still active, and the Arctic convoys were bleeding under the hammer blows of U-boats and German surface raiders. HMS Duke of York's first great responsibility would come later, not in 1941, but in 1943. When she carried Prime Minister Winston Churchill across perilous waters as part of his journey to the historic Tehran Conference. It was no small voyage. The North Atlantic was unforgiving, stalked by U-boats, swept by storms, and frozen with Arctic winds. But Duke of York delivered him safely, and from there, Churchill would meet Roosevelt and Stalin, shaping the course of the war itself. And that diplomatic mission was just the beginning. Soon, Duke of York would take her place as a frontline brawler in the bitter cold of the Arctic. Her role: protect the convoys feeding Britain's Soviet allies, and stand ready for anything the Kriegsmarine might send to intercept. The North was waiting. And so was Germany's last great hope, the battleship Scharnhorst. By late 1943, HMS Duke of York had settled into a brutal rhythm, escorting Arctic convoys through freezing winds and icy waters. These lifelines delivered tanks, trucks, and ammunition to the Soviet front, braving constant attacks by German submarines, aircraft, and lurking surface ships. Among the greatest threats was the Scharnhorst, a fast, powerful German battleship that had eluded destruction for years. Armed with 11-inch guns and a dangerous top speed, she had harassed Allied convoys and danced out of reach of retaliation. But now, the Royal Navy had a trap. On December 25, 1943, the Allies' new Scharnhorst was hunting convoy JW-55B, heading toward the Soviet port of Murmansk. British intelligence had anticipated her move. And the fleet was ready. Duke of York, under the command of Admiral Bruce Fraser, was waiting in the dark Arctic waters, hidden by storms and snow. The trap was set. British cruisers would make contact and harass Scharnhorst, driving her into the path of Duke of York's guns. And on December 26, the battle began. The cruisers Belfast, Norfolk, and Sheffield made radar contact and began engaging. Scharnhorst tried to shake them, but she was being herded, and didn't know it. Then, through the mist and storm, Duke of York opened fire. It was a duel of giants. Duke of York's 14-inch shells roared across the waves, slamming into Scharnhorst at over 20 kilometers. Radar gave her the edge in visibility. Her gunners landed hits that crippled the German ship's forward radar and guns. Still, Scharnhorst fought on. She tried to escape using her superior speed, but the damage was too great. She began to slow. Torpedo strikes from accompanying British destroyers tore into her hull. And then, Duke of York closed in for the final blows. One shell detonated deep in the German battleship's engine room. Another knocked out her last gun turret. At 7:45 p.m., Scharnhorst disappeared beneath the freezing sea, taking over 1,700 men with her. Only 36 survived. It was HMS Duke of York's finest hour, a textbook example of modern naval warfare, combining radar, coordination, and unrelenting firepower. But the sea wasn't done with her yet. After the destruction of Scharnhorst at the Battle of the North Cape, HMS Duke of York stood tall as one of the last great capital ships of the Royal Navy. Her victory in the frozen Arctic wasn't just tactical, it was symbolic. It marked the end of Germany's surface fleet as a serious threat. With Bismarck gone, Tirpitz trapped, and Scharnhorst sunk, the Royal Navy regained dominance over the North Atlantic. But HMS Duke of York wasn't done. In 1944, she returned south to support Operation Tungsten, a carrier strike against the German battleship Tirpitz in Norway. Though she didn't fire her main guns in the operation, she provided cover and command, a reminder that her presence alone could alter enemy calculations. As the war neared its end, Duke of York was sent east, assigned to the British Pacific Fleet to join the final push against Japan. But by the time she arrived in late 1945, the war had already ended in atomic fire at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The last shots had been fired, and the age of the battleship was closing. Duke of York returned to the UK, her future uncertain. She had survived the war, proven her might, and helped write the final chapter of surface warfare, but peace had no place for her kind. She served briefly as the Royal Navy's flagship, a symbol of Britain's endurance and industrial power. But the world was changing. Jet aircraft, missiles, and nuclear weapons were reshaping the battlefield. In 1951, just a few years after her greatest triumph, HMS Duke of York was decommissioned. And in 1957, she was sold for scrap, broken apart by the very hands that once sent her to sea. Yet her legacy lived on. In the cold Arctic, where steel met ice and radar met instinct, she had fought and won a pure battleship duel, the last of its kind in history. She proved that the Royal Navy, even in the darkest hours, could still strike hard. And though her hull is gone, her name remains. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time for more ships of war. Until then, goodbye and Godspeed.